Hi, I'm Prashant. I head up the marketing team here at Sharesight, and welcome to today's video. Today, I'll be doing a walkthrough of the exposure report. The exposure report intends to give you visibility into what's really inside your portfolio. The exposure report lists all your individual holdings that you own directly along with the ETFs that you've invested in, showing any overlapping holdings across all your investments. You'll then be able to group this report according to market, sector, industry, and more, while showing the weight of each holding and the corresponding value. You get to see the true picture of your portfolio exposure and make more informed decisions around your investment. We have received a lot of questions around the exposure report. Let me answer some of those. How would I use the exposure report over the diversity report? The diversity report is a tool that can help you better manage your risk diversification by seeing the weight of all your direct investments and where all your money sits. This is a good way to stay on top of any direct holdings that you own that make up a particularly large part of your portfolio. And unlike the exposure report, the diversity report can run according to your custom groups, which can help you get a better understanding of your asset allocation and if you need to rebalance your portfolio. The exposure report, on the other hand, takes into account any holdings you hold directly together with the contents of the ETFs that you've invested in. Compared to the diversity report that would consider ETFs as a single asset type, the exposure report gives you a more complete picture by presenting any overlap between your direct holdings and those underlying holdings in an ETF that would indicate if you're over or underexposed to a particular market, sector, industry, or even a direct stock. Why should I be considering my portfolio's total exposure? As ETFs are increasingly becoming a more popular investment type, it is important to also have visibility into the underlying shares of each ETF to gain more insight into the risk involved in owning these ETFs alongside the risk of your own individual stock picks. From a value perspective, you may want to know if your ETF is tracking certain industries such as tobacco or gambling that you necessarily don't want to be investing in, or if you want to make sure that you are investing in companies that are committed to ESG standards. Generally, seeing your total portfolio exposure across direct holdings and holdings held inside ETFs paints a more accurate picture of how much you're invested in to a particular stock, market, industry, and gives you more information if you need to make any adjustments to your portfolio by selling some of the individual shares due to overlaps with underlying ETF shares, or knowing which ETFs you would like to keep or sell if you find it doesn't fit with your overall investing strategy. The next question is, what prompted Sharesight to develop this report? We received a lot of feedback from our customer base, many of whom are significant ETF owners or have a substantial portion of their overall portfolio allocated to ETFs. A prevailing concern they've had is a lack of visibility into the specific holdings of these ETFs, which prevents them from fully grasping the risk exposure of their holdings. The next question is, what specific problems does this solve for investors? The exposure report lets you take a closer look at the contents of your ETF. You have a better understanding of the composition of your investments to help you make better decisions. The final question is, how do you expect this report to impact the way investors make decisions about ETFs? The insights from this report help investors make smarter decisions about their ETF investments. By clarifying what actually these ETFs hold, investors can better understand the risks involved. As a result, they figure out whether their current ETF allocations are aligned with their overall investment plan, and when necessary, use this information to rebalance their portfolio. To show you a demonstration of this report, I've set up a sample portfolio called My Portfolio, which has a mixture of direct holdings as well as ETFs in it. To access the exposure report, simply click through to the reports menu and you'll find it under the asset allocation part. Just click on the exposure report and say run report. It'll then bring up an ungrouped version of all exposure in your portfolio. I'll just sort it by percentage, which means the highest percentage of the holdings come at the top and then sorted in decreasing order. So in this portfolio, I have a pretty high exposure to Apple, not only through my direct holdings, but also through the underlying holdings inside an ETF. The same thing goes with BHP in this case, where I have a mix of direct holding and a couple of ETFs in which it already exists. If you have a consolidated view, you can load that up and run the exposure report on that as well. So in this case, I've opened up a consolidated report and I'm running the exposure report again, and the default should load up with a do not group order. In a consolidated report, you can then see that this has unlisted instruments such as cash accounts, investment properties, basically anything unquoted in your portfolio. You can similarly load it or order it by decreasing percentage, and you can then see what the actual exposure to various holdings are. So in this case, you can see that there's Apple in 2 different portfolios, as well as through the underlying holdings of ETFs. You can toggle this drop down by sector classification, which will then show you your exposure to various sectors. You can visualize your exposure to various sectors by simply selecting the sector classification, or even the country drop down to see which countries you're most exposed to in your portfolio. So in this case, as you can see, that the US has about 79% exposure, and I even have a tiny exposure to Taiwan through one of my holdings or through the underlying ETF in it. Hopefully this gives you a good idea of what the exposure report is all about, and you're able to make some informed decisions on your portfolio. This is how you gain more clarity over the total exposure of your portfolio. The team at Sharesight would also like to thank all our beta testers who provided their feedback and help us build this report. We're committed to creating a tool for investors. If you have any questions or comments, leave it below or reach us via our website. Don't forget to like this video and hit that notification bell to get notified every time we upload new videos. Follow us on social media at Sharesight for product features and announcements. See you all in the next video. Bye.